Hello, everybody. Reggie Time here, and we're joined by Owain shortly, and he sent me some hands for us to review. I'm in charge today of clicking the buttons. Um, so let's get stuck right into it. Don't forget to hit the like button, leave a comment if you don't mind, share, subscribe, all of those things, and I'd be most grateful. Let's get on with chatting with Owain.
Cool.
So before we started recording, Owen was telling me about a mistake he made last night due to playing too many tables. And I wouldn't mind having the conversation again briefly with you, Owen, because I think it's relevant to a lot of people. Just explain what happened.
I was playing three tables at the same time, and I normally play two. And basically, obviously, I fold in about three quarters of my hands, standard. But I had three hands playing at the same time, and they all went to the river. And I ended up calling a big bet on the river, and I misread the board because I was distracted by the other tables. Um, and yeah, it was a huge blunder, really. When I replayed the hand a few minutes later, I couldn't believe I missed it. A flush came in and I completely missed it. It was like a backdoor flush, basically.
Yeah,
And yeah. So I think from now on, as we were just discussing, I'm just going to play two tables at a time to get the quality in. So I'm playing what is my A game rather than trying to get the volume in. I think it was a mistake, really. I
yeah,
regret it
I agree. And I think for most players, I mean, my advice always used to be back in the day play lower stakes and play a bit higher to keep it more interesting. So if you say, I don't know, say you've got €200 on a site, which is probably what you'd want to play 5-0 with 40 buy-ins, and maybe you'd want to play 4 to 6 tables. I'd say playing 2 to 3 tables of 10-0 is going to be better for your development. It's going to be
Yeah.
more engaging for you because the stakes are
Mhm.
going to be slightly more meaningful. Um, Hopefully, it will increase your focus and just help you make better decisions. I think like the micro stakes, it's really easy to get stuck in a mindset of right, I want to get through this stake quickly, I want to blast through it. So I'm just gonna play as many hands as I can physically cope with per hour and just try and like volume my way out of a limit. And I don't necessarily think unless you're in like really soft games and your autopilot game is really spot on,
Yeah.
you shouldn't be doing that. And if you are in really soft games and your autopilot is spot on, then just move up. You know,
Yeah.
just move up and still play less tables and just like quantity over quality is not what we should be aiming for, in my opinion. Yeah, we want to get out the micro stakes as soon as possible. We want to get up a bit higher and pay less rake. Play games that, when you play a session, if you play like a session of 5-L and you win at 10 big blinds 100 and you play 400 hands, you've won $2. And for most people in like developed nations with reasonable economies, that's like, well, whatever, big deal. And it's not much different. If you did the same at 10, it's only $4 or €4 or £4 or whatever. But then when you get up to 20L and 50L, that then becomes not the worst hourly rate in the world.
No.
If you're like playing 20 and you're winning, say, 40 big blinds an hour, then you're not doing too bad.
Yeah.
You've got like a reasonable hourly rate there for like relatively small stakes, and same at 50L. So yeah, I would say focus more on the quality of your play over the quantity. And this is a trap I've fallen into many times. I
Yeah.
still fall into it today, and I'll probably fall into it again in the future. So there is more than a touch of hypocrisy from me here. But
Yeah.
I think, like, especially when you're a player who hasn't got a long history of winning at the game,
Yeah.
starting to try and run before you can walk is typically going to be a shit idea.
Yeah. Oh, it's a blunder. I knew it was a blunder. And I think because I've watched you on the site playing four tables at the time. You automatically, like you say, your autopilot game is you kind of. I just feel like you follow the four tables much quicker than I do. Do you know what I mean? You'll think you can just think quicker. I know for a fact that I'm not doing that. I kind of need to really think about what I'm doing, and also what's happening. Just things like little things like this, the stack of the person I'm playing against. If I'm in three hands at the same time, especially if someone's left and another person's come with the same avatar, I can completely not notice that if I'm playing too many
Right.
tables,
Okay. Yeah.
so I can't do that. I think that's a
There's
massive blunder. That's
there's a
basic, really,
skill in
isn't it?
itself to adding volume.
Yeah.
Um, and I did a video about it for Microgrinder literally years and years ago now. Probably doesn't exist anymore. About like using your time banks effectively,
Mm.
and like keeping your eye on tables and hands you're not in, etc. And like
Mm.
one of the things that I think is a skill that I have that maybe some other players don't have is that if I'm in a spot and I've got a really easy decision, say I've 3-bet pre-flop, I've got aces, and I've flopped top set or I've flopped an overpair or something. So it's really easy, right? Okay, I know what I'm doing on this flop, and I can make that decision literally within 2 seconds. I already know what I'm doing, but
Yeah.
I'll use some of my time back there to consider what I might do versus various different actions. Like, what if my opponent raises? What will I do? What if my opponent calls and the turn changes the board? What will my line be then? And I think
Yeah.
when you've got a really easy decision, instead of acting
Yeah.
immediately, if you just take a few seconds to consider potential future board changes or potential action
Yeah.
from your opponent that can change your thinking of where you are in the hand. If you can think about that in advance, like, right, look, I've flop top set. If my opponent raises, what am I going to do? Probably
Yeah.
just going to call, let him keep bluffing. Or if he just calls, which turn cards am I going to barrel on which particular turn cards am I
Yeah.
using an overbet size? Which turn cards am I using 75%? Which
Yeah.
turn cards am I checking? And I'll be doing that in advance. So then when whatever it is happens, I'm prepared for it already. I'm
Yeah.
already
Yeah.
prepared for it.
Yeah.
So I'll see bet top set, and then on the board a flush card comes. So I'm like, right, well, okay, well now I'm going to probably be checking or like betting small or what have you. And I'll just think, I'll try my best to think of in advance. And when I'm playing well, that's what I do. And one of my triggers to let me know, not one of my triggers, one of my indicators that I'm not playing well and I'm maybe my mental game slipping is I stop doing that and I start rushing like everybody else does.
Yeah. Yeah.
I'll just make decisions really quickly. I won't think about potential future action. And that's usually an indication for me to, I mean, it's fine to tell yourself to slow down. That doesn't usually work. I think it's usually time to take a break.
Yeah. Yeah. That's my
When you find
strategy. Yeah.
yourself acting too quickly and when
Go
you
for a
find
walk.
yourself not doing the good practices. Because what I've
Yeah.
just described is good practice. And when you're not doing it, then you're not playing your A game.
No.
So
No.
it's
And I
usually a good
can't.
time to
Yeah.
take a break.
I have to be playing my A game. I think I can't be
Yeah.
like I
So,
possibly haven't got a B game, if you know what I mean. I've got a C game. Do you know what I mean? Like
yeah.
you've been playing a
Basically,
long
you've got
time.
an A game that wins. And then when you're not on A game, you're a losing player, basically.
Yeah, exactly that. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
So I have to prioritize playing my best rather than putting in the volume. Yeah,
Well, Phil Galfond put a video out last week about this type of thing. I'll put a link beneath the video if I remember to it. It's
yeah,
really good. It's all to do with um, like playing sessions that are too long, noticing when you're not playing your rate. It's a really good video, and
yeah.
Galfond does a lot of good stuff. This one was a
Yeah.
good one. I'll put the link beneath the video, and you should definitely watch it, and it
Oh,
will
brilliant.
definitely be some help to you. But we've rambled for 8 minutes. We haven't looked at a hand yet. So let's get stuck in.
Let's
I
do it.
haven't looked at any of these hands whatsoever. You sent me them last night.
Yeah,
Um, I just uploaded them and I tagged them for review, and then you sent me all of your hands, so we now seen the stats that you were seeing in game.
yeah.
But
This
I
is
haven't
your head, though, isn't it?
literally. This is my
Yeah.
hood, yeah, but I
Ah,
haven't looked at a single one of these hands, so everything is going to be brand new to me. So here we are. We've got Queen Jack in the big blind. Button limps 24/2. Wheel folds. So straight away, we have a decision here. Do we want to check or do we want to put a bit more money in? What do you think?
I don't mind either here. He's only got 20 big blinds behind. I think I'd expect I probably checked.
Yeah, I think I'd check this too. He's got 20
Yeah,
bigs. He's played 24-1, and his raise first in by position is 2% middle position, 1% cut off, 2% button, 4% small blind. So he's limping strong hands. So his limping range is going to contain
yeah,
a lot of hands stronger than Queen Jack off. So I like not ISO in here because I think a few people would be like, "Oh, well, button limp. We should maybe ISO this hand." But his stack depth and the way he's constructing his ranges says to me, I think we want to just see a flop here and then proceed from there rather than like ISO. If we make this 4 or 5 blinds here, he's very unlikely to fold. He's limping a tight range to begin with. If he limp jams, it's a disaster. If he limp calls, we're going to be left with an SPR of say 1.5, and up against a range that likely has us is likely at least as strong
Yeah,
as like as a range we're
kid off.
isolating.
Yeah,
So we do check and we flop middle pair.
I know
Actions on
what.
you. What do you think?
I remember this hand.
Okay.
I check here. And I think I would check now as well
No, I think
because
checking's fine here.
yeah,
This guy's really quite passive post flop as well. These are his like post flop
Mhm.
bet percentages. That's significantly lower than population's averages.
What what
Um,
what is the bottom line
the
on
bottom
your head?
line, that is donk bet percentage.
Yeah,
That is just bet flop. It's not C bet. It's just any time when they just bet the flop, bet the turn, bet the river, and then this number is when they've bet the river and been called, how often they've won the pot. And this guy's
every
bet the river
time.
5 times. He's won the
Oh
hand
God.
5 times. So
Okay.
this guy's a pretty enormous nit. So I think like if he starts betting, we probably don't have a particularly good hand to call down with because this guy's limping. So we know he's limping a lot. He's got, for example, Ace Queen in his limping range. He's raising 2% from the button. So
Yeah.
as silly as this might sound, Ace Queen is in his limping range. Maybe Pocket Queen is in his limping range.
Yeah. That's what
Because
I was
he's
just
raising
thinking. Yeah.
2%. That might
With
just be
aces and
Aces
kings.
Kings.
Yeah.
So you can literally have nutted hands here still, even though theoretically he shouldn't have hit this board at all. In
Uh-huh.
practice, he just can. So I think that betting into this guy isn't such a good idea. And I think check calling was probably not a good idea either. Although if we bet one blind, we'd have to call. We couldn't just fold to one blind. So
No.
we checked. We checked back. Turn is a 7. So now can we start leading for value?
We can, but I think I'm trying to think what he would call me with. Because he could easily have something like jacks, couldn't he? But I don't even know if he'd fold that. I think I would check.
He could also have nines
Yeah, he could
and
have all the
tens
pairs. Yeah, yeah.
and eights. So I don't know. I think that after he checks back flop, I think we can have a little like just min bet here.
Okay.
Because I don't. This isn't a guy I want to be check calling against because he's so passive. It's not a player I want to be check calling against. So I'd probably just min bet here, and you know he's
If
going
he
to call with
calls,
tens. He's going to call with nines,
yeah,
etc. He's going to call with eights. Maybe he calls with sixes even. Maybe not though, because if we min bet here, it might look like we're just trying to bet a 7, and so he's just probably going to call with his nines, tens,
yeah, yeah,
jacks, things like that. So I think I'd favour a bet here personally.
yeah,
We
yeah.
check again. He checks back. It might be the smallest. I'm interested to see why you put this one in for review because so far nothing's happened, and we've reached the
This
river and nothing's happened.
I know exactly why
Uh,
this is in, and it's a very boring hand, but I know exactly why
well,
it's in.
well,
And
thanks
you've
for
kind of
sending me
answered.
a very boring hand to kick a
No,
video off.
no, 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 no. I I check here,
Yep.
and I think it. I wanted and he checks, and I think he's got pocket fives, if I remember, or something like that.
Yeah. Okay.
And my question was, when should I have started betting, or should I have? Because
Turn.
I knew he was a nit,
Yeah.
and I didn't. I wasn't. I felt like I played it too passive, but I was. You've already answered it on the turn, really. I didn't think he would call me, you see, with a pair worse than with a hand worse than mine, and I didn't think he would be what's the word? I didn't think he would be calling from the button with that much worse. I felt like my starting hand was kind of, even though it sounds silly because it's button versus blind, I thought I was at the bottom of his range. I didn't think he would be opening, say, Queen 8 off or Queen 10 off. Maybe he'd open, maybe he would live with Queen 10 off. I don't know, but I wasn't sure if I was too passive or not. obviously I've won, and I've won 2.5, or I've won 1.25 blinds, whatever it is. But yeah, you would have started betting on the turn basically.
I think so, yeah. I mean, yeah, the guy is passive, so he can still be limping back some hands like ace, 10 and what have you. But, he can also have hands like this that probably can't fold to one bet.
If he called you on
Again.
the turn, would you then bet the river as well? If I just
Yeah,
bet one big blind,
probably on this 6, I'd probably just block small again.
yeah, just
And that's
maybe like
specifically just trying to get calls from the range of hands that are like made hands lower than a queen.
a week, a
This
week,
guy, if he
a
raises,
weaker
we
queen,
just fold.
or a
No, maybe,
pair small.
yeah, maybe a weaker queen. I'm thinking more like jacks, tens, nines,
Yeah, yeah.
um, eights.
Okay. Yeah, I
This
played it too
hand,
passive. Yeah.
I think just a little bit too passive. I mean, it's not such a big deal, but we don't want to be. I mean, if he'd bet this river, what would you have done?
Depends how big you bet. If you bet one big blind, I'd have called.
Yeah,
Um,
but
but I don't think if he'd have bet the pot, I mean, it's such a small bet. I probably would have called, but I wouldn't call an overbet, for example, even if it was
no,
like 3.5 blinds.
I just think against these types of players, you don't want to be playing bluff catcher very often.
Yeah.
So if
Because
you've got a hand, if you're on the river here and you think, well, like I don't really want to check call against this guy because he's so fucking nitty, then just do the betting yourself.
and if he, yeah, that's quite right. Because then if I'm putting money in, he's calling me when I'm beating him, as well as, yeah, I see what you mean. Whereas when he's
Yeah,
putting the money in and he's decided, I'm probably never winning.
yeah. Basically, what happens here is when you bet, sometimes you lose, sometimes you win. When you
Yeah.
check and he bets, you almost always lose.
Yeah, well, yeah,
So it's
according
just
to the head,
higher
yeah, yeah,
EV. It's just going to be higher EV here to just bet and like who knows what he might call with. He might
yeah,
just be really curious and call with King Jack or King 10, something like that. You just don't know. I mean, this
yeah.
guy calls rivers. He calls rivers 45% of the time, and he wins 58% of the time. So
Okay, yeah, so
he is
I could
capable
have,
of calling with worse. And these are like stats I like to have. This one here is a stat I've put in myself.
yeah,
These are all standard. These ones in like the slightly paler green, they're already in there standard. And this is one that I just have myself because I want to know how stationary people are on rivers. So this guy's only folding 45% of the time. He's winning 60%,
yeah,
which I've seen far worse stats than that. If we have a look around, maybe we're going to see different. Like this guy's folding 80%. So this guy, I'd be like, right, well, I'm just going to bluff the river a lot against this guy.
yeah,
Against this guy, I'd bluff the river a bit less
yeah,
because he's
yeah,
going to get to the river with stronger ranges
yeah,
because he's so passive. Whereas this guy, he's folding
mm,
80% of rivers over a smallish sample. He's the guy I'd be more comfortable running bluffs against. So, it's like using your HUD, getting to know your opponents and just
yeah,
like, right, okay, I think this hand, in theory, wants to bluff X% of the time, but if we have a villain we think's overfolding, then we increase our bluff frequency. If we're up against a whale we think is like calling too wide, then we reduce our bluff frequency. And
mhm,
that's why it's really important to like have your HUD and use your HUD and tailor it for things you want to know. Yeah,
yeah,
these HUDs are really good on Poker Tracker. They've got lots of important stuff in just as a default. But like flop,
yeah,
for example, things I put into my
mm,
HUD on turn, sorry, turn probe. It's not there as a standard. I put it in
yeah,
there. I've got like how often people call delay C bets, how often they fold to delay C bets, how often they delay C bet. That's not in the HUD as a standard.
yeah,
And I've also got, because I downloaded some stats for pre-flop, I've got stats versus hero. Because sometimes I can think of one particular villain in my games, Tommy, who like
from
his
the
three bet
Discord, is
stat
it?
versus me. Yeah,
Yeah,
Tommy from the Discord. Have a look
yeah,
at these tools here. I've got
yeah,
three bet versus by position and three bet versus hero, and Tommy here is three bet versus me is almost double what his three betting versus population. So it's important to know stuff like that too, because you get some regs who
yeah,
you think these are proper regs who are
yeah, good,
um,
yeah, yeah,
who are like three betting decent ranges, and then you've got other regs who aren't three betting decent ranges, but then might be three betting more. So if you've got a reg, say for example, who is only three betting 7% from the small blind
hmm,
versus button open, and that's because look at these pools, people aren't raising the button wide enough, 26%, 2%. This guy's got 50. So it's important not to over 3-bet. But then if they against me, they're 3-betting more than 7% because I'm opening more buttons than population. Then I could be like, oh well, this guy's actually not. His 3-bet range from the small bet isn't necessarily 7%. He's just adjusted but to population, and he's then
Yeah.
adjusting to me. And all
So
these
they're
things
paying
add up.
attention basically, and they hear
Yeah,
you.
they're paying attention, so I need to pay attention to it. Then you get other regs who
Yep.
3-bet me maybe the same or less than they do population, and that guy isn't paying attention. So
Yeah.
you can like differentiate between who the good and who the bad regs are,
Yeah.
despite that even when they've got similar headline pre-flop stats.
Mm-hmm.
On to the next one. King Jack off. We open cut off. Small blind calls. Folds. Top pair. We get donked into for one big blind by a fish. What are
I
we
think.
doing?
Well, I treat that as a check because it's just one big blind. So I just think if I if he checked, what would I have done? Um, and I would bet. Now you're gonna ask me what size. Who is this guy's the 56-48, is he? Just
38-4, this guy.
oh, okay.
56 is the number of hands. 44 is the one win soft flop percentage. It's
Okay.
38-4.
I think I would bet about 35%. I got a 35% betting on my head. I think I would bet 35%.
Okay, why that size?
Um, why not bigger, you mean, yeah?
No,
Um,
just why that size? Why would you choose that size in particular? What's driving you to land on that number?
I'm thinking about it more. I think just from the drills that I've been doing, um, it seems to like that size. I'm just conscious now there's a flush draw there. He's going to call with that, but he's probably going to call with that anyway. I think I probably bet a third pot, 35%. I'm one. Why would I not go? Because I don't want to make it too big, basically. Because say if I bet pot and he calls, and the board gets a bit what's the word?
More coordinated.
Yeah, more coordinated. Either a flush card or a straight card, or maybe the eight pairs. I'm not. I just feel like it could get scary for me, so I don't want to make the bet too big. So and he calls, and then I mean, yeah, that would be my reason. I think I'd bet a relative, not as small as him, obviously, but I think I would go about 35%. I don't know if that's what I
Okay,
did, but
okay.
I'd
Well,
imagine that's what I did.
here's my thoughts on this situation. First of all, assuming he's checked. Um, I completely agree with you that this board can change significantly, so we shouldn't be in a rush. Typically, to build a large pot, specifically against regs.
Hmm.
Um, I think that's a lot less relevant against passive fish. When especially when we're in position post flop. So I think like I like where your head is in terms of okay, this it's good. We've got a strong hand at the moment, but there's loads of turn cards that can like significantly reduce the relative strength of our hand. I get that, and I like it, and I like that you're thinking like that, and
Yeah,
that's a consideration for definite. But I think a bigger consideration in this sport is the fact we're up against a bad passive player, 38/4. Um, we can, in my opinion, use a larger size here. And if the turn is a card we don't like, say it's one of the worst in the deck, say the 9 of clubs or something like that, we don't have to bet. We can just check back and play some rivers. We don't have to
yeah,
continue building a pot.
yeah,
If against a reg, if the 9 of club comes, we're going to check, and we're then going to be worried that because we've capped our range, they're going to bluff more on the river. And
yeah,
theoretically, that might be true, because when we cap our range um, on a board where the board's changed and it's not the worst card in the world for the blinds, they should be being more aggressive on the river. They should have more bluffs. They should try and attack our capped range. But in reality, it's not really happening that much. Look at this guy, 508 hands in him. I don't know if they're your hands or my hands. I've got him tagged yellow, so I'm presuming this is someone I know from my games. But they're still only betting the river, not very often. They're still only betting river 25%, and they've had it every single time. People in microstakes are not playing theoretically sound poker on the later streets. They're just
Hmm.
not. So it's good to be aware of that, like that you mentioned, and it's good to be aware of the players you think maybe are playing theoretically sound. Again, to refer back to a player like Tommy,
I play
who
in
is like
Villain
really
6.
aggressive. Sorry,
I thought I was playing Villain 6.
you are playing Villain Six. I just pointed this guy out as like someone who's a reg, but who still
Ah,
isn't out of line on
sorry.
rivers.
Yeah,
I
sorry,
just
mate.
used him as an example of this guy looks like he's a relatively aggressive reg. If you look at him, 27,
Yeah, yeah,
21, he's raising decent ranges pre-flop. I'd look at things. He looks quite aggressive
yeah.
until the river, and then
Yeah,
on the
yeah,
river, he's just a fucking massive giant nit and
yeah.
slightly stationary.
Yeah,
So on the river, he's doing a lot more checking because you can see like it's like his flop aggression percentage 44, turn aggression percentage 39, river drops all the way to 25, and he's won every time he's bet.
yeah,
And
yeah,
on the river, he's doing a lot less folding. So it looks to me like he's slowing down a lot on rivers and doing a lot of checking, and then just not folding to bets as often because there's
yeah,
just
yeah,
like people, players just play rivers badly. It's the street we're least practiced in.
yeah.
It's a street that's like
The street we
a
played the
lot of
least,
times
I
the
suppose, isn't
hardest to
it? Yeah,
play. Yeah, it's yeah. I mean, we pre-flop we play every street.
yeah,
Sorry, every single hand we play a pre-flop. Rivers we maybe already play of the hands we start with pre-flop 100% of hands. Rivers we maybe already get to the river 5% of the time. If you
yeah,
account for all the times we've folded before the river. So we're just not very well practiced in it.
yeah.
So my point being is that if regulars are playing rivers badly, there's no reason to imagine why Fish would all of a sudden just wake up and start putting us in the bin with some
Yeah,
like
yeah.
stunningly
Good point. Yeah,
theoretically optimal plays. It's just not likely to happen, is it? If we
yeah.
check back the turn nine of clubs and they bet big on the river, they've probably just got a better hand than one pair.
Hmm.
If they bet small on the river, with the chance we can beat their like thinner value combinations, etc. We just have to hand read. Anyways, as played, I like 75% here. I would
Yeah, yeah.
ignore this, and I'd be like, well, okay, 75% about. If it was six big blinds,
Four and
it'd
a
be
half. Yeah,
four and a half
yeah.
bigs. So I'd probably go like five bigs here. That would be my raise size of choice. You went even
Oh,
bigger, despite the fact you said you would have gone small.
yeah,
You've
yeah.
actually gone big,
Yes,
which I'm not surprised at because every single person
yeah.
I ever talk to never gets their own hands right when
No,
they're
no,
reviewing
that's
them.
fair. Yeah, yeah. I
They,
suspect it's because I thought I could get value from him. Yeah,
yeah.
yeah.
So why do you think then that when we're reviewing this hand now, in the
Yeah.
cold light of day, with all the time in the world to think about it, why do you think you thought it was a small bet, and then why do you think you delivered a large bet in game? Where's that disconnect? Why have we got that?
I
Like
think
what you think in theory and what you actually execute at the table.
I think um because I've been doing a lot of these drills on GTO Wizard, I think I think this would be a smaller bet on there. And I think what I've done, I've adjusted just thinking that he's going to call a bigger bet with a weaker hand than King Jack.
If that's what you've
And I
done, I like that. I like that a
yeah,
lot. If you literally have been like, okay, I'm
mm,
not even sure if this would be a small bet in GTO Wizard and the drill.
maybe not. Yeah,
I don't even think it would be. We'll have a look at it in a minute because we're going to be able
yeah,
to
because it's heads
pull
up in
this
it.
one
Yeah,
into GTO. Yeah, we're going to be able to look at this one. I don't think this would necessarily favour small bets here. I think there's going to be some checking. I think there's going to be some like. I think this is a sort of hand where it might give you various different sizes that you can use. If we put it in the simplified section where it only gives us check and one bet size, I think then it would probably want to go um, 2/3 pot, 75% pot here, something like that.
yeah.
But we'll see. We'll see when we review it. So you've gone
Hmm.
this size. I like that. Villainous called. Turn is an interesting card. Villain checks. Now what are we thinking?
Um, I think I would check. Because not necessarily because I think he's got a queen. Um, but I can basically see the river before I decide if I want to bet. Um, he's quite passive. What's in the pot at the moment? 20. He's got 55 left. Um, I suppose the board is more connected now. Um, but the king, I think I'm going to check, and I think I would check now as well.
Okay, I
I
like
want
the fact you're going to check. I think you've landed on the right decision. I think your
reason is
reasoning for
wrong.
doing it was pretty meh, to be honest with you. Because
Okay.
you stated, I might check now, and I could like decide on the river if I want to bet or not. And that's honest of you. That's that's what you said, and
That's
that's
wrong.
why you checked.
Yeah.
It's not. I don't like using words like wrong and being like it's just negative, isn't it? But it's just a bad card for our range, isn't it? Really, like not. It's not a bad card for our range. It's not a great card. Like he has straights in his range, for example. Yeah, he's called out the small blind, so theoretically he shouldn't have a lot of 10-9. He's 38/4. He might have 10-9 suited pure here,
Yeah.
for example. So he's got that in his range. He's got Jack Queen in his range, pure, I would imagine.
Yeah.
Maybe
Queen
he's got
10, do you
some
think?
Queen 8 suited. Queen 10, yeah, Queen 9. So I just think in terms of like he's donked the flop and called a raise. This isn't a card I want to barrel on. If we bet here
Yeah.
and he jams all in, we have to fold. That's a disaster. Um, yeah, I just think overall,
Oh yeah, he donked it. Yeah, you're right there. I
I
was
think Villain's range has improved slightly for this
straight
queen, and
chose. Yeah.
obviously our hands got a little bit weaker. We had top pair good kicker, and now we've got second pair on the board where Villain can have straights and two pairs at quite a
Mhm.
decent clip. So that's the reason I would bet. I just think Villain's range has been improved quite a lot by this, and our relative hamstrings got weaker. So those two things coming together for me make this just. I'm just going to pure check this, and then
Yeah.
decide on the river what to do based on what he does.
Yeah. Yeah.
So we didn't right. So okay, why have you done this? Because this is the second time in this hand, particularly, you've done something that
I
is
wouldn't do now.
wildly
Yeah.
against what you've just been saying.
Why did I do this?
Because I think
Um,
this is really bad, to be honest with you.
so do I.
I think you're going to get
A red
a
cross.
red
Yeah.
mark here. Yeah, blunder might not be blunder, but I think there's a chance it's a blunder. If it isn't a blunder, it's definitely a red circle.
I don't think he is going to call that with a worse hand than what I've got.
Well, he might, but that's not really the point. The point is like what I want to get to
No, I'm trying to work
is
out why I did it. Yeah.
yeah. I don't want to know
Yeah.
what you think now. I
Yeah.
want to know why you've done this. When you've previously stated you think there should be a check, because it's the second time in this one particular hand where
Yeah.
your thought process away from the table is not
Mhm.
married to your thought process at the table,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
this will be a problem for you. It's a problem in execution. It could be to do with what we mentioned at the
Yeah.
start of the video. If we're being charitable to you, I'd say maybe because you're playing tables that makes you feel a bit rushed. This is what's leading to these mistakes.
Yeah. I
But
mean,
or maybe though, it's an
yeah.
emotional thing. Maybe you're just like shit. I really don't want to like check back and then have this board run out bad. So maybe this is just you like wanting to charge draws. He's scared of a draw hitting, so you wanted to try and make him fold a draw. You might not be that's what you're doing, but I'm thinking of the reasons why players who like I've worked with in the past do this sort of thing. It's often because they are trying to avoid a tough decision later in the hand, where if they check back here and the river's a bad card, you don't want to have to deal with that. So now, and I'm not saying this is what you're doing, by the way, just to reiterate that, maybe you're doing this because you want ace 10 to fold,
Yeah.
or you want
Um,
6 7 of clubs to
that,
fold,
I thought
things
I'd
like that.
ironed those mistakes out though. I'm trying to think. I with the last street, I know that the what I did makes sense to me. Um, just because I know I would size up if I thought someone would call, and as an exploit, if you like. I'm trying
Yep.
to think why I would have done this because it's not a misclick. I have made a conscious decision to bet. What was it? Nearly
Three
pot,
quarters
three
pot.
quarters pot. Yeah, yeah. So I've clicked the size up button. The only thing I can think of is he donked and then he checked, and I'm wondering. I do what you just said about making hands like ace ten go away, or I'm trying to think what he could have. I'm a bit disappointed with myself if that's what I've done though. But I that is
Yeah,
charging his
this is
draws
like
basically. Yeah,
the reason I'm making these videos with people like yourself and Simon, etc., is to demonstrate how I work with players who aren't doing very well. So hopefully
yeah,
now and again someone comes along and says, "Reg, if I give you some money, will you help me?" That's that's basically why I do these videos.
yeah, yeah,
So I'm not gonna let you away with this because this is rubbish, and we need to know why
yeah, yeah.
you've done it. Because
I,
it's not
yeah,
you've done it and it's rubbish, and you know it's rubbish too. But
yeah,
it's
yeah.
my job to
That's the
help. It's my
frustration. Yeah,
job
yeah,
to help you like figure out why it is you've done this, and then try and help you put a different thought
yeah.
process in
I'm trying
place.
to
So if you can't tell me why you think you've done it, I can't help rewire your thoughts.
no the the only thing I can think of is that either he's given up. I think he's given up on the hand because he didn't donk into me this time. But that's
Hmm.
not a good reason to bet
No, because it's
because
given
I
up on the
want
hand.
to.
What? Yeah, it's just going to fold. So why would you bet against someone who you think's
Yeah, yeah,
giving
no,
up?
that's what I mean. Yeah, yeah, that's what I mean. Yeah, yeah. And I've bet big. If he's given up on the hand, I could. I don't need to bet big, do I? Um, it's a huge blunder. This.
Yeah, I'm not trying to put you on the spot and make you look silly, by the way, fella.
Oh no, I
But
know.
this is like
It's I gotta
this is a really
answer the
big
question.
mistake, and it's an enormous disconnect between what you told me
I would do
before
now. Yeah,
and then what you've done now. And it's really important that we get this thinking more joined up.
I think. Hmm, I was trying to give you an answer. Um, I I think I'm trying to work out what I wanted to happen with the bet. Did I want him to call me, or did I want him to fold? And that obviously I've got Jack. So presumably I've bet for value, but I've bet big, which I've seen that I bet big on the flop, didn't I? And I think I'm trying to. The only way I can make this make sense to me is that the board has got scary, and I've gone into old habits, and I've bet big to charge
Yeah,
his
I
draw.
suspect that's what's happened.
Yeah, I've tried.
And
Yeah, and I don't
yeah,
like it. Yeah, yeah.
and and you've got into an old habit because of what we discussed at the start of the session.
Playing too many tables.
If you were one tabling here, if we took it right down to the extreme, I don't believe you would have done this.
No, because this is from
So
the earlier session I played last night when I was
yeah,
playing three
this is
tables.
this is like I don't know if you've read the mental game of poker, but this is a classic example of you only having conscious competence at the minute because you're
Oh,
learning new things.
Jared Tindler, is it?
Yeah, Jared Tendler's thing. He talks
Yeah,
about
yeah,
like the different levels of competence we have. Like we have unconscious incompetence, which is basically when we don't have a clue what we're doing. Babies are like that; they haven't got a clue.
yeah,
They're unconsciously incompetent because they can't fucking do anything, and they don't know that they can't do anything. They're just fucking useless. I've got a granddaughter; she's lovely. They're just fucking useless, aren't they? They can't do anything for
I know.
themselves,
Yeah,
and
yeah,
they don't know that they should be doing things for
mm,
themselves. Then you've got like a level of um what comes next? I can't remember now. You've got unconscious incompetence. Then you've got conscious incompetence, where you are
have to
shit at
think about
something,
it. Yeah,
and you know, no. That's when you're shit at something, but your conscience, you're shit at it. You know,
yeah,
yeah, I'm shit at this, but I'm aware of it at least. And then
yeah.
you've got
Is it
conscious competence,
yes,
and that's when you're like very in the moment and focused. So
yeah,
you've just learned something, and it's right at the front of your mind. And when you're thinking about it, you can deliver it. But
yeah,
you've also got like what you want to get to is a level of unconscious competence, which is where
yeah,
you do a lot of things without thinking about it. So an example of unconscious competence is you always fold seven deuce off, even
yeah,
when you're like at your
yeah,
biggest tilt session of all time,
Yeah.
you were still just open fold 7 deuce off. So you've learnt that to the level of unconscious competence where no matter what's happening,
Yeah.
you are just still delivering on that particular skill.
Mm-hmm.
And then and then you always know to like open aces, you know to nearly
Yeah.
always 3-bet aces. And then you get spots like this where when you were in the zone of focus, you're like, right, okay, I think this probably a check back of range here. Maybe not a full range check back because we would want to continue barreling 10-9
Yeah.
specifically here. We'd probably still be happily barreling sets and Jack Queen. So we are going to have a betting range here. But
Strong
it's not
hands.
going to be,
Yeah.
yeah, it's not going to be second pair. Second pair isn't going to make it into it. Our betting range is probably going to be straights and 2-pair plus, and
Yeah.
then our bluffs are probably going to be clubs, diamonds, and maybe something with a 10 in it, something like that
Yeah.
that blocks some of the straights that he might have, because
Yeah.
that's what our bluffs can look like. And like that when you sit and you think about it in an environment like this where you are consciously competent, you're
Yeah.
coming up
And there's
with
no timer. Yeah. Yeah.
you're coming up with better plays when the pressure's on, when your emotions are running because shit that board's scary, etc.
Mm.
You're losing your unconscious competence and you're falling back. You're losing your conscious competence and you're going back to old habits.
Yeah.
And your old habit here is to bet because you're scared of the board.
To try and get him to go away, basically. Yeah,
Yeah.
which is
So
bad.
how are we going to reach? Well, you reach the stage of unconscious competence by doing what you're doing, continuing to study, drill, study. But
Yeah.
until you are at a level of unconscious competence, what are you going to do to try and be in a state of conscious competence more often?
Two table max, I think.
Yeah, I think that's
I
right.
yeah.
We spent a long time talking over this, but I think it's really important discussion for you as an
Yeah.
individual, but for also a lot of players like you watch this video who aren't very
Yeah.
good at poker, who aren't winning at poker. I think the discussion we just had there is going to be, if to take it in, quite valuable. And
Yeah.
if
Yeah.
you are wondering what book, I'll repeat it again. It's A Mental Game of Poker by Jared Tendler. If
Yeah.
you've never read it, get it and read it.
I've got it
It's
on
really
Audible, I think.
really
Yeah, yeah.
good.
He
Yeah,
makes
yeah,
the comparison with driving a car, doesn't he? When you're learning to drive a car, the first lesson you have to really concentrate. And
yeah.
obviously, the person who's passed the test and been driving for years, his unconscious competence is the last
Yeah,
one, isn't
yeah. A
it?
lot of the stuff you just unconscious competence. You're just doing stuff.
You do it. You don't have to think about it. You know what
Yeah,
to do with your feet, with your hands, where to look. Yeah, it is a good
yeah.
book.
It's a really good book. If you
Mm.
haven't read it, anyone who's listening, if you
Yeah,
haven't read it, make it a priority to get it. It's not just about tilt. It isn't. It's a lot about like it identifies 7 forms of tilt and like helps
yeah.
you inject logic into
I
why
think
those things
I
shouldn't
can
make you
stick.
tilt. But for
I'm gonna
me,
stick it on again actually because he gives
yeah, I would
tips
if
on
I
how
was
to
you.
get it. Like I think I remember, he like one of the things he suggests is to kind of make notes of, and every 20 minutes in your session, just check, are you doing all these things that, like, do you know what I mean, that you
Yeah,
said you were going to do? Um,
it's a good book. It's not just
yeah,
people think it's just about managing tilt. It isn't. It teaches you how to teach yourself. It explains things. It's just it's a work of art of book. The second book I think is a bit shit to be honest. Um, but the
yeah,
first
yeah.
book I think is really really good, and it's to me it's required reading for anyone who's playing poker on a regular basis.
Hmm.
And on top of that, it just gives you life skills
Yeah,
because you
yeah,
can apply a lot
100%.
of you can apply a lot of what you're saying to non-poker real life situations.
Yeah, yeah, I
You
agree.
know,
Yeah,
and just inject logic into situations that trigger you in real life. It just helps you deal with situations where you're triggered and might not think straight. It just makes you a far more critical thinker, in my opinion. It's a really good book. Anyway, we bet this turn. Villain's called. River is a 6. Villain's checked again.
I really
Now
hope I
what?
check. I can't bet.
Yeah, I think it's too thin to bet here.
He's got 41. Um, how much? Yeah, I sincerely hope I check this
I think if
because
you were to go like incredibly hard exploit, we could bet a quarter here.
10
I'm trying to
blinds
get calls from
and 11
8x,
blinds.
Jack 10, Jack 9, those types of things. If you wanted to be like incredibly like because you wound up yourself up to be really exploitable. Because if he raises, you have no choice but fold.
Yeah, I'm
But
basically
I'm looking at
telling
this
him.
guy's.
Yeah,
I'm looking at this guy's river aggression. It's non-existent.
he does call.
River.
Oh no, you.
How often has he
The other guy.
raised a river? He hasn't had a chance to raise a river yet. He's had 2 chances to check raise a river, and he hasn't taken either. 2 bet, none from 3. I think as a very, very, very hard exploit, we can go a quarter pot here. But I think theoretically we just check back
Mm-hmm.
as played. So let's take a little look. We did check, and he had the perfect hand for your turn value bet. Really, you had
Yeah.
the perfect hand.
I still
But
think
let's
it
just
was a
well,
massive mistake, though. Yeah.
yeah, we're going to pop this one. I'm going to pause for a second. We're going to pop this one in GTO Wizard just to see the
What they
turn line.
say.
See
Yeah.
if we had ever betting the turn here. And so, do we think we're getting a red circle here or a red triangle? What do you think you're getting?
Pre-flop.
Sorry?
Were we on pre-flop? What?
No,
What?
just for the hand in general. Are you getting 2 ticks? Are you getting 1 tick? Are you getting orange circle? Are you getting red circle? Or are you getting red triangle? What do you think you're getting for your play in this hand?
I think I'm getting red triangle, but
Ooh,
not for the pre. I think the pre-flop's okay.
Yeah. I think turn might agree with Turner might agree with you. Well, it's actually a non-existing GTO spot, so that's not particularly fucking useful for us. And I think it might be non-existing GTO because of
Is
the
he
turn.
donk?
Yeah, that's why it's gone non-existent. I know the turn's a non-existent spot because you've just bet big on a spot where you probably shouldn't have any bets.
Okay.
So that's where we've blundered. So pre-flop's completely fine, of course. Flop, he donks. It's just pure calling versus min donk. But this bearing in mind
He
that
donked
this
one.
is
Yeah.
a min donk from a theoretically good range. We're not dealing with that here. We're dealing with someone who's min donking who's playing 38-4. So I'm ignoring that. But the problem
Okay.
is now it's going to mess things up on the turn a lot. We raise, he calls, and this is why it's non-existent on the turn now because it's just having us checking pure, and you went with this. So we can't
Yeah.
go any further. But we kind of it was going to be a slightly messed up hand review because of his stupid min donk. But yeah, I think the turn is just going
Is
to be a
it
pure
worth
check.
doing
Let's
it with
run
him
this. Let's
checking? Yeah.
imagine. Yeah, that's what I'm going to do now. We're going to study the spot, but we're going to like recreate the hand and have him check
Yeah.
the flop, and I was bet 3/4 pot. So flop, we're going to have him checking, and we're going to bet 3/4, which is
What I
around
did
about the
actually.
size you went.
Yeah.
He's going to call.
So I was wrong with what I said, though, wasn't I? I thought it was going to be a third.
And what was it? What did it favour?
On the I can't see the screen big enough. It favoured
Um,
on the. Oh, I'm
it's
trying to put.
mixing it.
I'm
56
trying to. I'm trying to look.
globally. Well, just take your time, buddy. Globally, it's a 56% check, and then globally, it's mixing between 1/3, half, and 75%. That's what it's doing basically. But
Yeah.
what's it doing
So
with our specific hand, which is what was our
check.
specific
Yeah.
hand?
King Jack off.
King diamonds, jack spades, king jack off suit. King jack off suit is checking 70% of the
Wow.
time, and it's using half pot as its most likely bet size, mixing between half and a third.
I was wrong.
Now, our
Yeah.
particular suit, diamonds and spades, what were they? King of diamonds, jack of spades specifically, is checking 89% of the time.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I was wrong too in terms of like, well, maybe not wrong in theory because I think this is a board I would check quite a lot in theory. But again, this is a really good hand to review because theoretically, your flop bet size of 75% is not right.
No.
It's a big mistake, almost a blunder. It's almost a red triangle.
Yeah.
But game theory optimal players do not play 38/4.
No.
So knowing what theory looks like, okay, this board
Mm.
theoretically I check and have small bets here. I'm mostly checking, and when I'm betting 1/3 or maybe half at like a 20% frequency.
Mm-hmm.
That's fine to know that. But I'm not playing a good player here. I'm not playing a reg. I'm playing a fucking idiot. So
Yeah.
therefore, I'm just going to just like look at my hand using like the Doug Polk category system, and my hand is category 1. I have top pair, good kicker against a fucking idiot. So it's a category 1 value hand, and I'm just going to bet 75% pot. And I think
Yeah.
that is better than GTO in this
In this
instance.
situation. Yeah. Yeah.
So I think what you did is actually better than what theory would have told you to do
Yeah.
against this specific villain. Against a reg, if you go 75%, I think you're making a mistake.
Mm-hmm.
Against a passive fish, I think betting 75% is easily the best option. But then on the turn, we then think again about what theory wants us to do, and theory is going to want us to check a lot, even more so because we've made a large flop bet, therefore like thinning
Yeah.
villains range quite significantly, and then
Mm-hmm.
we hit a turn that's bad for our hand in terms it relegates our hand strength and also strengthens our opponent's range. I think then we want to follow theory and we want to check back pure on the turn.
Yeah. I've
So
got very
theory can
lucky in
kick
this
back.
hand, haven't I? Yeah.
You have got very lucky, but it's why we're doing this, so mate, isn't it?
Yeah.
And it's probably been
I've won
uncomfortable for
quite a
you
big
to like
pot.
to go
Yeah.
through this.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's you probably going through this now and thinking, fucking hell, that makes me look bad. Which is why we're doing it. If you weren't making these mistakes, you wouldn't
Yeah. Yeah.
fucking need me. So that's why we're doing this, and I appreciate you not just bringing hands that are like, yeah, well played. It was a cooler. Yeah, well played. You're
Yeah.
actually
Yeah.
bringing hands that you think you've butchered,
I know.
and
But yeah, I know I've butchered them.
and
Yeah.
that's and you're going to learn the most from doing that.
Yeah.
So yeah, I spoke to Owen while we were on pause, and he's got another 55 minutes. So we're going to do a second video. You guys have watched 51 minutes of me and Owen talking. We looked at two hands, one of which was 2.5 big blinds. So if we look at it just through that, it's been a bad video, but it's been a really good video because I think we've had this hand particular has spawned a lot of really good discussion, which would be really useful to a lot of players who are playing 5-L, 10-L, and not winning. I think this will have been a really useful exercise for them to watch, and I hope people have reached this far and got something from it. But for now, we're out of here, Owen. Don't you go anywhere because we're going to get straight back into recording the next video. But
Yep.
yeah, everyone on YouTube, the second part of this video will probably I might put it out at the weekend. I might save it for Saturday or Sunday. So yeah, but save for the second part of this video. Probably going to come out at the weekend. So yeah, take care, everybody, and bye bye for now.